My name is Claire Bennett, and I'm 34 years old. The storm outside the glass panels of my father's Vermont lake house was nothing compared to the one that had just detonated in the dining room. The air was thick with tension, wood smoke, and the scent of expensive wine. The lights over the long oak table glared too brightly, spotlighting the moment my father turned his back on me in the most humiliating way possible. "Congratulations, Logan," he said, pushing a heavy envelope across the polished surface to my younger brother. His tone was calm, businesslike, final. "The villa, the company, the offshore accounts, everything," he said. "You've earned it." I sat across the table, heart hammering, hands numb in my lap. I could feel the cold even through my tailored slacks. My body might have looked still, but inside, I was fracturing. Logan avoided my gaze, staring down at the envelope like it might bite him. His mouth was tight, his eyes low, and beside him, my stepmother Evelyn clutched her necklace like it could protect her from guilt. She wouldn't meet my eyes either. Then came the moment, the one I'd always feared, even as an adult who had supposedly stopped needing his approval. My father turned to me. "And you, Claire," he said with a sneer curling across his face. "You've always been a dreamer, weak, too soft to survive in the real world." 1,000 knives in 5 words. I felt the humiliation rise in my cheeks, heard the way silence bloomed in the room after his words. There were 4 people at that table, my father, Logan, Evelyn, and Mr. Cole Whitman, the estate lawyer. But in that moment, I'd never felt more utterly alone. "I gave you a chance," he added, voice sharp. "You walked away from this family, from the company, for what? Some underpaid clinic in South America?" I swallowed hard. "You never asked why I left," I whispered. "You never cared." "And I still don't," he snapped. "Because he stayed." He nodded toward Logan. "He was loyal." I could have laughed if it didn't hurt so much. "Loyal?" I said quietly. "He showed you what you wanted to see." "He earned it," my father barked. "You threw everything away." "I found something worth holding on to," I murmured, more to myself than to him. Mr. Whitman shifted uncomfortably. His fingers were tight around the leather folder in front of him. Then, to my surprise, he cleared his throat. "Actually," he said, voice suddenly louder than the storm outside, "before anyone signs anything, there's something you should hear." My father frowned. "What is it now?" Mr. Whitman looked him dead in the eye. "A sealed amendment to the will. It was added 6 years ago at the request of your late mother, Margaret Bennett." My heart stuttered. "Grandma?" She had always seen me. When I was a quiet child, she'd told me, "You don't need to raise your voice to make a difference. You just have to stand where others won't." My father scoffed. "What amendment? She had no authority to change anything." "She did," Whitman said, firmer now. "She maintained 51% controlling interest in Bennett Holdings until her death. You never contested it. Legally, she had every right." The room fell into stunned silence. Logan looked up sharply. Evelyn clutched her necklace like it had turned into a noose. "Miss Bennett," Mr. Whitman turned to me. "Would you like to read it, or shall I?" I shook my head, still staring at the envelope Logan held like a stolen prize. "Read it," I whispered. Mr. Whitman unfolded the document with care, like it was a holy text. "In the event that my granddaughter, Claire Bennett, is deemed unworthy by her father, I hereby grant her full authority over my share of Bennett Holdings, effective immediately. All voting rights are to be transferred to her name upon activation of this clause. This amendment overrides any prior agreements regarding decision-making or inheritance within the company or estate." It was like the storm itself had paused to listen. The rain slowed outside. The room held its breath. "What the hell does that mean?" my father growled, standing abruptly. Mr. Whitman didn't flinch. "It means that your daughter, Claire, is now the majority shareholder. Nothing signed today can override that." The chair screeched as my father shoved it back. "This is absurd. She doesn't even understand the business." I stood slowly, the shaking in my knees replaced by something else, resolve. "Maybe not your version of it," I said, meeting his glare. "But I know how to lead, I know how to build, and I know how to protect people without tearing them down to feel powerful." I stepped forward, every eye in the room watching, but I wasn't performing. I was reclaiming something that had always been mine, my voice. You said I was weak, I said, voice calm. But I've done more with less than you ever could with all your assets. Mr. Whitman nodded respectfully. Shall we proceed, Miss Bennet? My father stood frozen, his jaw twitched, his fists clenched. But he didn't speak. He didn't sit. And for once, I didn't need him to. I turned to Whitman. Yes, I said, let's move forward. We have a company to run. If I had been waiting for permission all my life, I realized in that moment I no longer needed it. I had the one thing that couldn't be bought, inherited, or faked. The truth. My father didn't sit back down. He stood there, fists white-knuckled at his sides, watching the world shift out from under him. And for the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. Not the kind that lashes out, but the kind that sinks in. The kind that whispers, "You've lost something you never thought you had to fight for." I took a breath, a full, intentional inhale like I hadn't in years, and I said gently, "Please sit." Not to shame him, not to win. I wasn't here for revenge. I was here for restoration, for dignity, for truth. But he didn't move. It was Logan who spoke next. "Wait," he said, almost a whisper, though the edge in his voice sliced clean. "This isn't right." He looked around the room, at Evelyn, at Mr. Whitman, at my father, as if he expected one of them to come to his defense. "She left," Logan said, voice rising. "She wanted nothing to do with the company. She ran off to help people or something." That something wasn't vague to me. I remembered every hour I spent helping build housing for women fleeing domestic abuse, the months I lived in a remote village, working with injured veterans, the endless days of small, quiet service no one applauded. "I didn't run away," I said, locking eyes with him. "I ran towards something that mattered." He scoffed, folding his arms. "That's cute, but you don't know how to run Bennett Holdings." "I know enough," I said, lowering my voice so it carried more weight. "Enough to know you've been skimming funds through a shell corporation registered under your old college roommate's name." Logan paled. Evelyn's hand dropped from her necklace. "Ava, Claire," she corrected herself quickly. "Stop. This is family." I turned to her. "Was it family?" I asked. "When you stood by as my father called me a failure, when he handed everything to Logan without acknowledging my existence, without asking what I sacrificed, what I contributed?" She didn't answer. Her silence screamed louder than words. "You weren't built for this world," she whispered finally. "No," I replied, voice steadier than I felt. "You all made that clear." But then I said something that caught in my throat. "Grandma thought differently." That name, Grandma, was a spell. It softened my voice, thickened the air. Mr. Whitman gently cleared his throat, as if he'd been waiting for the right moment. "Miss Bennet, your grandmother didn't just leave you voting rights. She left something else, something to be given only after this moment." He opened his briefcase and pulled out a small weathered box. It looked old enough to belong in a museum. Inside was a gold-plated compass, worn at the edges, and a letter folded with care. My name was written on the front in Grandma Margaret's delicate cursive. My hands shook as I opened it. "My dearest Claire, if you're reading this, it means your father has done exactly what I feared. Don't hate him. He was raised in a world where power meant loudness. You, my girl, were born different. You have the kind of strength that bends, but never breaks. Quiet strength. Steady strength. This compass is yours now, because no matter which direction you choose, I trust you to lead." My chest tightened. I blinked back tears, not because I was sad, but because someone had believed in me when I didn't yet believe in myself. Mr. Whitman was watching me, gently, patiently. "Let's proceed," I said. I signed the document that acknowledged my controlling stake in Bennett Holdings. As the pen lifted from the paper, my father finally spoke. "You think this makes you powerful," he said. His voice was low, bitter. "You think she gave you this out of love? She did it to spite me." I looked up at him, really looked, not as a daughter hoping to be seen, but as a woman who now saw him clearly. "No," I said softly. "She gave it to me because she trusted me to use it to build, not break." I left the room before anyone could stop me. The hallway outside felt different, lighter. My shoes echoed against the marble, but the sound didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt earned. But peace wasn't waiting for me. Vavas. I hadn't reached the end of the corridor before I heard him behind me. Claire. I stopped and turned. Logan stood a few feet away, his expression unreadable, calculating. You don't have to do this, he said. Do what? Push me out. I tilted my head. I haven't made a move, Logan. I simply stood up. He let out a dry laugh. You think signing some papers makes you powerful? My heart pounded in my chest, but I didn't let it show. I'd learned something important in that room. I didn't need to look powerful. I just had to be steady. I'm not here to prove anything to you, I told him. I'm here to lead, with integrity, something this family seems to have forgotten. He stepped closer, too close. I give you 2 months, he sneered. 2 months before you crawl back. The company's not a charity, he added coldly. It's a battlefield. I took a breath, lifted my chin. No, it's a platform, and I'll use it to build. You can keep your battlefield. He narrowed his eyes. You really are naive. And then he turned and walked away. But something about the way he walked, his clenched fists, his stiff shoulders, told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't surrender. This was the first strike. The next few days rolled in like a thundercloud that just wouldn't break. I barely had time to breathe before the phone calls started, the glances, the whispers in the hallway when people thought I couldn't hear, the looks that lingered just long enough to sting. Claire Bennett is back, they said. But not like before. This time, I wasn't just a name from the past. I was the woman who walked into the boardroom and changed the order of power with a single signature. They expected drama, firing sprees, changes made by force. But I didn't fire anyone. I didn't march into meetings demanding obedience. I listened. And what I heard chilled me. The departments weren't just disorganized. They were at war with each other. Entire teams were pitted against one another, feeding a toxic hierarchy of favorites and scapegoats. Promotions were handed out based on loyalty to Logan, not merit. Employee burnout wasn't addressed. It was punished. Any concern raised was a threat to authority, an inconvenience to be removed. This wasn't a business, it was a kingdom. And Logan had ruled like his father. I saw it clearly for the first time. The company was never built to last. It was built to be controlled. Every division tied to a leash. Every innovation suppressed if it came from the wrong person. One afternoon, I wandered into the break room. Conversation died the second I stepped inside. People froze. I raised a hand gently. Please, I said, my voice even. You're on break. Sit, eat. No one moved at first. Then, slowly, a janitor I vaguely remembered, Rosa, stood. She was older than me by at least 20 years, with strong hands and tired eyes. We weren't allowed to sit, she said quietly, if Mr. Logan walked in. My breath caught. That changes today, I said. She gave me the smallest nod, the kind that doesn't mean much to anyone else, but felt like a seed planted in cement. That night, I stayed late in my office. No music, no distractions. Just me, a stack of financial reports, and the growing weight of responsibility. What I found was worse than I expected. 3 separate budgets had been misappropriated. One account redirected funds to a vendor that didn't exist. Another showed inflated marketing expenses, with no campaigns to justify them. And then there were the terminations. Dozens of employees let go within a single year. Every one of them had flagged financial inconsistencies. This wasn't mismanagement. This was rot. And it went deep. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I sat by the window, watching the moonlight spill across the city, trying to figure out how I was going to clean up a mess that had been rotting for years. But before I could move, Logan struck first. The next morning, he stormed into my office like a man who knew the power of spectacle. He held a folder in one hand, thick with papers. His eyes sparkled with cruelty. You want the CEO seat? He hissed. Let's see you survive this. He dropped the folder on my desk with a dramatic thud. Screenshots, emails, photos, enjoy. I opened it. My own signature, supposedly approving a $400,000 donation to a fake charity. photoshopped images of me at closed-door meetings with blacklisted suppliers, and email threads full of language I'd never use. "These are fake," I said quietly. He shrugged. "Can you prove that?" My stomach twisted. He leaned in. "You really want to destroy me?" "I want what's mine," I said. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You were never meant to win." I stood slowly, putting the folder down like it was toxic. "I don't want to win," I said. "I want to fix what you broke." He laughed once. "You see weakness. I see power." "No," I said, more to myself than to him. "You see domination. I see responsibility." And then he was gone. Just like that. But I knew what he left behind was a loaded weapon aimed directly at my credibility. By lunchtime, the damage had begun. News alerts popped up on my phone like bullets. New CEO accused in charity fraud scandal. Bennett family implodes over control of empire. Claire Bennett, legacy leader or liability? The headlines didn't wait for evidence. The public never does. I was being shredded, and I hadn't even held the reins for a week. The emails flooded in. PR demanded a statement. The board was restless. Clients were nervous. But the worst moment came late that night. I was alone in the office. The building had gone quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning. I sat curled up on the office couch, the same one where my father used to bark orders. Now I just broke. Not loud. Not messy. Just silent sobs into my knees. I wasn't crying because of the articles. I wasn't even crying because people didn't believe me. I was crying because maybe they were right. Maybe I wasn't cut out for this. Maybe I was still the girl my father mocked. Too soft. Too naive. Too idealistic for a world that rewards sharks. There was a soft knock at the door. I wiped my face fast, sat up, tried to look composed. But Rosa walked in anyway. She held a paper cup. "Thought you could use this," she said. "You didn't have to," I whispered. She set it down gently. "You looked like you needed it." She sat across from me without asking. "No one ever brought me anything when I cried in this room," she said softly. "So maybe someone should break the cycle." I stared at her. Something inside me cracked again, but this time not in grief. In healing. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. She looked at me with the kindest eyes. "Because someone once helped me when no one else did. And because this company doesn't need another king." She reached out, touched my hand. "It needs a healer." The next morning, I didn't walk into the boardroom like a CEO on a mission. I walked in like a woman who'd finally remembered her why. The polished floor no longer felt cold beneath my heels. The glass walls no longer made me feel watched. I wasn't here to impress anyone. I was here to repair what had been left in ruins. Not just the company, but the people inside it. The board members were already seated, their expressions a cocktail of suspicion, doubt, and thinly veiled resentment. Some shuffled papers, others whispered behind hands. A few couldn't meet my eyes at all. Let them. I didn't need unanimous applause. I needed truth. I stood at the head of the table, let them speak first. One by one, they voiced their concerns. Some accused me of incompetence. One shareholder, Mr. Green, with a tie too loud and a voice too smug, flat out demanded my resignation. "If you truly love this company, Claire," he said, "you'll know you're not equipped to run it." I let him finish. I let them all speak. And then I placed a stack of manila folders onto the table, each marked with names and dates. Before I respond, I said calmly, "Please take a look." They hesitated, but curiosity always beats doubt. Inside were original reports, unaltered, time-stamped, and verified, highlighting multiple financial discrepancies under Logan's name: transfers, shell contracts, hush money to vendors. Some looked up, shocked. Others turned pale. Then I picked up the remote. With a tap, the projector behind me flickered to life. Grainy footage appeared. Surveillance from a locked office door. A man, Logan, entered using a master keycard. Inserted a USB, transferred files. The timestamp matched the date those forged documents against me were created. Gasps spread through the room like sparks. I let the silence settle. Let the truth do what shouting never could. I didn't come here to destroy my brother, I said evenly. I came to repair what he broke. The tension in the room shifted, cracked, just slightly. I turned to the company attorney. My grandmother gave me this role not because I was perfect, but because I believe in people, even the ones who hurt me. A long pause followed, the kind that demanded stillness. I won't press charges, I continued, but Logan is suspended immediately, and a full investigation will proceed. It was quiet, still, no one interrupted. Then someone stood. It was Mr. Halpern, one of the oldest board members, retired but still influential. His voice was raspy, his suit rumpled, but his gaze was steady. I doubted you, he said. Thought you were just another idealist, another charity-run dreamer. A few chuckled nervously. But today, he paused. Today you reminded me why we built this company in the first place. It was never about empire. It was about people. He looked around the room. And maybe we lost our way. But if she's our compass now, he nodded toward me, then maybe it's not too late. Applause didn't follow. Not yet. But the energy in the room shifted, less like a storm and more like the wind changing direction. Logan didn't return. But 2 days later, I received a letter, no envelope, just my name scribbled on the front. Inside, his handwriting was rushed, uneven. Claire? I don't expect forgiveness. I didn't just want control. I wanted to be seen. I thought you got the love I never did. Maybe you just earned it differently. Maybe I couldn't see that. Logan. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't mean anything, but because it did. I folded the letter and tucked it beside my grandmother's compass, the one she trusted me with when no one else did. That night, I sat in my office, watching the lights from across the city blink in slow rhythm. The company was still fragile. There were still fires to put out, trust to rebuild, wounds to tend. But something had changed, not just in the boardroom, in me. I wasn't waiting for applause anymore. I was building something no inheritance could buy. The next few weeks blurred. I met with every department. I spoke to people, not as their superior, but as their partner. I asked questions. I listened. And in doing so, I saw the deeper damage. Some teams hadn't collaborated in years. Departments competed like enemies in a rigged game. People feared making suggestions, speaking up, even taking sick days. They weren't lazy. They weren't disengaged. They were traumatized. They'd been taught that trust was dangerous, that silence was survival. I knew that feeling too well. So I started small. One lunch at a time, one real conversation at a time. I shared stories, not about power or numbers, but about the people we'd helped, the families we'd rebuilt through community outreach, the shelters we'd funded. I reminded them of the why. Rosa was there through all of it, quiet as ever, but somehow always present. Some people lead with volume. She led with presence. One day she walked into my office and said, "You're turning this place from a fortress into a home." I smiled. "It's not perfect." "No," she said, "but homes never are." And just like that, I knew. This wasn't just about proving my father wrong. It was about proving something much bigger right. The changes I made weren't loud, they weren't flashy, but they were real. No sweeping press conferences, no dramatic purges, just methodical shifts, rewriting outdated policies, restructuring departments to foster collaboration, and investing in wellness programs that should have existed years ago. It wasn't glamorous. It was work, quiet, constant, often invisible. But then Logan struck again. I should have seen it coming. One morning, just as I was preparing for a quarterly report presentation, I opened my inbox to find it flooded. Claire Bennett accused of redirecting charitable donations. Internal fraud or family feud. Scandal deepens at Bennett Holdings. My body went cold. Clicking through the links, I saw screenshots, email threads, and even video clips, painfully edited, but damning to anyone who didn't know better. A source close to the family claimed I had funneled money into a shell charity in exchange for kickbacks. The charity? It was one I'd worked with personally, a women's shelter I'd once helped rebuild with my own 2 hands. My stomach twisted. It was happening again. Logan was trying to frame me, only this time the stakes were higher, and he was smarter. These weren't the clumsy forgeries from before. These were crafted to feel real, to manipulate emotions, to weaponize the narrative. The public didn't wait for explanations. Clients pulled back. Investors paused meetings. One of our biggest partners froze a multi-million-dollar deal, citing reputational risk. And worst of all, some of the employees I'd worked hardest to connect with started to pull away. Eyes that once met mine with trust now slid to the floor. The PR team called an emergency meeting. You need to make a statement, now. But what could I say? That it was a lie? That it was Logan? Without proof, I'd sound paranoid, defensive. Worse, I'd sound like I was unraveling. That night, I sat alone in my office, blinds closed, lights dimmed. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, trying to draft a response. Something that wasn't just true, but human. Honest. But nothing sounded right. And then it hit me. Maybe Logan didn't care about ruining me. Maybe he just wanted to invalidate me. Make me question myself. And it was working. I stared at the reflection of myself in the dark window and didn't recognize the woman I saw. Exhausted, bruised, uncertain. Was I truly strong enough for this? Maybe my father had been right. Maybe I was built to help people, not to lead them. And then, there it was again. A knock at the door. Soft, familiar. Rosa entered, no clipboard, no duties. Just her and a paper bag. I brought soup, she said, lifting it with a half smile. You didn't have to. Didn't I? She asked, sitting across from me. Because you're sitting here looking like someone whose whole world is crumbling. And I remember what that feels like. I blinked hard. She didn't look at me with pity. She looked at me like someone who'd walked through fire and still had the courage to reach back for someone else. Claire, she said gently, do you want to know the truth about this company? I nodded slowly. She exhaled. I've worked here 28 years, long before Logan became a rising star. I've seen things people pretend not to see. Bribes disguised as bonuses. Favors called mentorships. People let go because they refused to look the other way. I swallowed. And you? You stayed? I needed the job. I had 2 kids to feed. And for a long time, I told myself it wasn't my fight. She paused, then looked at me. But then you came back, and you looked me in the eye. I didn't realize how much that meant, until she said it like that. You may feel alone now, she said, but you've got something they'll never have. What's that? Loyalty earned through kindness. I stared at her. She smiled, gentle and certain. You don't have to become them to win, Claire. You just have to outlast them. Those words settled into my chest like warm bricks, solid, grounding. The next morning, I walked into the boardroom again. No notes. No PR spin. Just the truth. If anyone here can prove those documents are real, I said, facing each face around the table, I will resign, today. The room froze. Then I dropped the folder of original reports onto the table, every shred of data tied to Logan's financial misconduct. Unauthorized bonuses, phantom contractors, expense reports that read more like money laundering. I clicked the remote. Footage played on the projector, Logan entering a secure room, plugging in a USB, modifying files. The timestamps aligned perfectly with the fabricated reports about me. No one spoke. No one needed to. I didn't come here to dismantle this family, I said, but I won't be buried by it either. Someone near the end of the table whispered, My God. I turned to the company's attorney. We begin a full internal audit. Logan Bennett is suspended effective immediately, and anyone found complicit will face the consequences. I won't lead with fear, but I will lead with integrity. I expected backlash. Instead, Mr. Green, yes, that Mr. Green, cleared his throat. I owe you an apology, he said. I didn't believe you, but now, I think you're exactly what this company needs. Not a round of applause. Just a nod from each member. One by one. Quiet. Earned. Respect doesn't come all at once. But when it comes, It plants roots that can't be shaken. It had been just under a month since everything flipped. The boardroom showdown, the headlines, the humiliations, the slow, deliberate reclamation of power. You'd think that once the truth came out, the storm would settle, that people would move on, return to their routines, offer smiles in the hallways, maybe even gratitude. But no. Silence still was louder than applause. People watched me now, really watched me, waiting, testing, wondering if I'd follow through, if I'd clean house, if I'd retaliate. I didn't. Instead, I rebuilt, slowly and quietly, like a craftsman sanding the edge of something long neglected. I started with small acts that meant everything. A reinstated PTO policy for frontline employees. Mandatory ethics workshops for upper management. Open-door lunches where anyone could sit with me, no agenda, no pressure. Some came out of curiosity, others out of hesitation. But when they left, they whispered less and started speaking up more. I wasn't trying to be loved. I was trying to be clear. You didn't have to step on someone to climb here anymore. Still, despite the wins, there was one silence that hadn't broken. My father. Not a word. Not a message. No confrontation, no apology, not even a passive-aggressive article sent through a mutual acquaintance. It was like he'd vanished, or maybe, more accurately, retreated, the way some people do when the world no longer bends at their will. I didn't chase him. But the space he left behind, it wasn't empty. It was full of echoes. Echoes of all the things he said when I was young. You're too emotional. You don't understand business. Real leaders don't waste time on feelings. His voice lived in my head longer than it ever should have. Even when I disproved him. Even when I won. That's the thing about pain dressed up as parenting. It's sticky. It lingers. You don't even realize you've been living by someone else's rules until you finally break them. And then, there's grief. Not the grief of losing someone, but of never really having them to begin with. I kept my focus on the work. Until 2 weeks later. It was a Sunday morning. The office was quiet. Most people were home. I came in to finalize a staff restructuring plan, still sipping my too-hot coffee, when I opened my door and stopped. He was sitting in my chair. My father, Richard Bennett. Hands folded. Back straight. But the power he used to wear like armor, it was gone. In its place was something hollow. Not regret, not yet, but maybe weariness. I had to see it, he said. See what? That you didn't burn it down. I didn't say anything. He looked at the space around him, the soft lighting, the open curtains, the flowers Rosa always placed on the shelf every Monday. It looks different, he said. It is different. He nodded. You were right, he said. About me, about Logan, about how this place stopped being about people. I stared at him, unsure whether this was a performance or a crack in the armor. Why now? I asked softly. He reached into his coat and pulled something out. A photo. Me, age 12, face streaked with paint. My grandmother beside me, laughing like she didn't care that we'd ruined the deck with our art project. She said you'd change this family, he murmured. I didn't want to believe her. I looked at the photo, then back at him. If I did, I said quietly, it's because she believed in me. He nodded. I came to say something, he said. Something I should have said a long time ago. He looked up and met my eyes. I'm sorry, Claire, for all of it. I didn't respond right away. I could have listed every betrayal. I could have told him it wasn't enough. That he broke things in me I'll probably spend the rest of my life repairing. But that would have been about him. And I wasn't here to carry his guilt. I was here to release my own. So I simply said, thank you. He swallowed hard. I just needed to say it before I ran out of time. Then don't, I replied. Fix what you can. It's not too late. He nodded again, slowly, then rose. No handshake. No hug. Just one last glance before he slipped out the door, leaving behind something I never thought he'd offer. A chance to begin again. 2 weeks later, Rosa entered my office with a new folder in hand. "What's this?" I asked. "A list," she said. "Every employee your father let go for speaking up." My breath caught. "I figured," she said, "you'd want to see it." I opened the folder, name after name, dates, departments, quiet exits that never made a sound. I nodded. "Send them letters." "Letters?" "Yes, invitations to return, no explanations required." "You sure?" "Yes," I said, "not because we owe them redemption." She tilted her head. "But because we owe them dignity." And that's what we did. One by one, the letters went out. Emails, calls, handwritten notes, each one a bridge. Some came back, some didn't. That didn't matter. What mattered was that we'd created the space for it to happen. Because healing isn't about getting everything back. It's about building something better. And that's what we were doing, together. It's strange, the way peace feels after a storm. You expect trumpets, celebration, a clean slate. But real peace, it's quiet. It's an early morning when the office hums to life without dread. It's passing an employee in the hall and seeing a nod instead of a flinch. It's small, it's soft, but it's everything. Over the next several months, the company shifted beneath my feet like soil turning fertile after years of drought. People who had once operated in silos began to share ideas again. A group of analysts started a mentorship initiative for interns. One assistant, quiet and overlooked, proposed a workflow overhaul that saved 3 departments over 60 hours of monthly redundancy. It wasn't just improvement. It was transformation. But even in the quiet, echoes of the past lingered. Logan hadn't returned, but his fingerprints were everywhere, in systems, in people, in habits that took time to unlearn. Some still clung to the old power structure like driftwood. I didn't blame them. Trust is fragile, and it had been broken too many times. So I didn't ask them to trust me. I just kept showing up. Every week, I made time for story circles, an idea Rosa suggested. Different employees from all levels would sit together and share something from their lives. Not to complain, not to report, just share. A moment, a challenge, a lesson. At first, people rolled their eyes, but one by one, they opened up. A single mom in HR talked about juggling 2 jobs. An engineer admitted he battled depression and had almost quit. Rosa shared how, in the darkest year of her life, a janitorial colleague lent her bus fare when no one else noticed she was walking home in the rain. The circles changed everything. They reminded people we weren't just coworkers, we were human. One afternoon, I lingered after the last circle, sipping my now cold coffee. Rosa sat beside me, flipping through a notebook. "You know," she said, "this place, it breathes different now." "Think that's good?" I asked. "I think," she said, "it's alive." She stood to leave but stopped at the door. Not everyone knows how to turn an empire into a community, Claire. And just like that, I realized that was what Grandma had seen in me. Not a fighter. A builder. It had been months since the boardroom implosion, and the media had largely moved on. The fabricated accusations were retracted, quietly, of course. That's the thing about lies. They scream on the way in and whisper when they leave. Some journalists labeled my survival luck. But those who watched, really watched, understood. It wasn't luck. It was the long game. And I'd played it with integrity. Then one crisp autumn morning, something unexpected arrived. A donation receipt. 7 figures. Made in my name. To the women's shelter I'd once worked with, the very one Logan had used in the fake scandal. No card, no note. But I didn't need one. It was my father. His way of saying what he still couldn't. And you know what? That was enough. Because I wasn't in the business of breaking people down anymore. I was building something he couldn't even see. Legacy built on kindness. 1 brick at a time. Later that week, I got a text from Logan. Just a single line. "Coffee, no agenda." We met at a quiet spot on the east side of town, a place neither of us had memories in. Neutral ground. He looked older, less polished, no designer coat, just a hoodie and tired eyes. We didn't talk about the company, or Grandma, or Dad. We talked about music, about the books we loved as kids, about the things we forgot we had in common. When we finished, he said, "I was jealous of you. You know that, right?" I nodded. "Yeah, I figured." "Still am," he admitted, "but I'm working on it." And that was enough too. Not every wound needs stitches. Some just need sunlight. The next Monday, the energy in the office was different again. A young employee from legal stopped me in the hallway. "Miss Bennett," she said, almost nervous, "can I ask something?" "Of course." How did you do it? Like, get through all that?" I smiled, thoughtful. I stopped needing to win. She looked confused. "I just decided I'd rather heal than conquer," I said. "That was enough for me." She nodded slowly, like the words were landing somewhere deep. And maybe that's what legacy really is. Not wealth, not control, but impact. How you make people feel when the room clears out. Who you were when no one was watching. What you changed, not to prove yourself, but to leave something better behind. I no longer needed to be the daughter who made her father proud. I was the woman who made herself proud. Months passed. The company didn't become glossier. There were no dramatic rebrands or viral press releases. The lobby still had that same dull painting I never liked, and the coffee machine still sputtered on cold mornings. But something far more important had shifted. It felt warmer, safer, real. People began to laugh in the hallways again, not in a forced way, not the brittle, echoing kind that used to follow my father's jokes, but genuine, soft laughter. Trust had started to grow roots. Logan never returned to the company, but we kept in touch, carefully, respectfully, two siblings, learning each other again from scratch. No longer adversaries, not quite friends, but something that maybe one day could resemble kinship. We met once every few weeks for coffee. He'd vent about whatever side project he was building. I'd tell him about the latest team member who'd surprised me with their insight or courage. We didn't dig up the past. There was too much there, and maybe that was okay. Because sometimes healing isn't about unpacking every wound. Sometimes it's just about showing up. Then, one rainy afternoon, a package was delivered to my office. No return address, just my name written in elegant penmanship. Inside was a framed photo. Me, Grandma Margaret, and a compass. It was the same photo my father had shown me, but this time, someone had restored it. The edges had been cleaned, the colors deepened. It looked almost new, even though the memory was so old. There was no card, no name. But I knew it was from him. Another silent offering. And I accepted it. Because I finally understood. He didn't have the tools to say the words. Not out loud. Not in the way I'd always wanted, but he was trying. And that mattered. You see, the hardest part about forgiveness isn't offering it to others. It's offering it to yourself. For the years you waited. For the times you begged someone to see your worth. For the moments you bent yourself to be more acceptable, lovable, enough. I had to forgive myself for thinking I ever needed his validation. Because the truth is, I'd been strong all along. I just didn't know it yet. A few weeks later, Rosa came to my office holding a different kind of folder. No spreadsheets, no audits. Just a quiet stack of notes. "What's this?" I asked. "Letters," she said softly, "from the people who came back." I took the folder from her, opened it slowly. Each letter was different. Some were long, some were just a few lines, but all of them shared one thing in common. Gratitude. One line stayed with me the most. "Thank you for seeing me when no one else did." I closed the folder and sat with that. Thank you for seeing me. It echoed like a hymn. Because that's all most people want, isn't it? To be seen, to be heard, to matter. I remembered the girl I was at 17, standing outside my father's office, clutching a college application he'd never even glanced at. The woman I am now would have told her, "You're already more than enough." Legacy isn't written in deeds or documents. It's written in the way people feel when they speak your name. That's the legacy I was building. So when a reporter later called to ask if I had any regrets, I said something that surprised even me. I don't regret the pain. I regret how long I believed I deserved it." She paused. "And now?" "Now I know better," I said, and that's all I needed. One day, while sorting through some old archived documents, I found something from my grandmother. One final note scribbled in the margins of a shareholder letter she'd written a decade earlier. "The loudest legacy isn't in wealth. It's in wisdom. If you can't hear it, you're not listening with the right heart." I pressed my hand against the paper, smiling. The boardroom wasn't cold anymore. The people around me weren't suspicious. They were engaged, empowered, relearning how to trust a leader who didn't shout, threaten, or manipulate. Because I didn't need to conquer the company. I needed to redeem it. And now, walking into that office every day, I didn't carry fear on my shoulders. I carried purpose. We didn't just grow profit, we grew people. We didn't just rebuild policy, we rebuilt culture. It didn't make headlines, but it made something even more rare. A workplace where people wanted to stay. And it all started the moment someone said I'd never be strong enough. Funny how that works. It's been just over a year now. A year since I walked into that boardroom, expecting humiliation, and walked out with a legacy I never asked for, but chose to carry anyway. Some days it still feels surreal. Not because I doubt it happened, but because of how quietly the most important shifts in life tend to happen. Not with fanfare, but with stillness. Not with applause, but with breath. We didn't become the most talked about company on the East Coast. We didn't land a glossy magazine cover or score a viral business podcast. But something better happened. We stopped whispering. Now, when I walk the halls of Bennett Holdings, I hear footsteps, confident ones. Laughter that isn't forced. Collaboration that isn't survival-driven. Conversations that aren't filtered by fear. That's the thing about rebuilding. It takes time. And it doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's just a woman sitting in her office reading a thank you note from someone who once thought they'd never be heard. Other times, it's someone knocking gently on your door, not with questions, but with ideas. Last week, Rosa brought me another folder. She does that now and then. But this one was different. It wasn't reports or staff notes. It was a list of community initiatives, some old, some new, proposed by the employees themselves. Ideas to build homes, support shelters, partner with mental health clinics, and create a scholarship for women re-entering the workforce. I read every word. Some were messy, some too ambitious, but all of them heartfelt. They cared. They wanted to care. Because they finally worked somewhere that cared back. And isn't that the dream? Not to rule, not to be feared, but to build something that grows beyond you. After reviewing the proposals, I called a company-wide meeting. No suits required, no hierarchy, just everyone. I walked into the room with Grandma's compass in my pocket. I didn't need it to guide me anymore, but I carried it to remember. To remember who believed in me first. To remember the strength I didn't know I had. I looked at the people gathered, some familiar, some new, all a part of something we'd built together. I smiled and said, "We're not just going to lead the industry. We're going to redefine what leadership looks like." They clapped, not politely, not performatively, but with real energy. We started reviewing the initiatives the next week. Some already launched, others were still being shaped. But the important thing, we weren't moving from fear anymore. We were moving from hope. And as for my family, Logan and I still meet occasionally. He doesn't ask for forgiveness. I don't ask for apologies. We just talk, like siblings who finally accepted that neither one has to lose for the other to exist. My father keeps his distance, mostly. But sometimes I'll receive something, anonymous, discreet. A donation to a cause I support. A book I once loved as a kid. An envelope with no card, but a photo inside. One of me and Grandma, restored like the past was trying to make peace. He may never say the words out loud. But that's okay. I've stopped needing things I'll never receive. And I've started noticing all the quiet ways people say, "I see you," without making a sound. So, to the person this story was truly about, Dad, if you ever hear this, I forgive you. Not because you asked me to, Not because I forgot, but because I refused to carry bitterness into a future I worked so hard to heal. And to Logan, I hope you're building something good, not just in business, but in yourself. You always wanted to be seen. I see you now. And to you, the one listening, tell me, have you ever been underestimated? Told you weren't strong enough? Smart enough? Enough? What did you do? How did you handle it? Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one because connection is what this journey has always been about. If my story moved something in you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. And remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. Leading with heart isn't weakness, it's courage. And you? You don't have to shout to be heard. You just have to stand steady in your truth. So keep going, keep building. And above all, may the next door you open be one you built yourself.